Hey guys, Nathan here, Polysource Industries. So you watched our video on rebuilding hydraulic pumps on the machine and you're like, uh-oh, I have an electric, what do I do? Well, we got it here for you today. We're going to be rebuilding an E30 pump. It's a bit bigger than your E20, but it's all the same stuff, just size is a little bit different. Alright, so let's get into this. Graco electric driven pump. Hopefully your parts are cleaned. Let's get into it. To start out, you're going to need either a new wet cup if yours is damaged on your A side. Part number is 246964. And you are going to need a pump rebuild kit, which is 15C852 for your A side, which does come with your O-rings for your wet cup, or you are going to need 246422 for your B side pump repair kit. Okay. The reason I mentioned the wet cup part number is it is on the grid on your manual, which you hopefully have out. But a lot of times this thing gets hammered on. You know, this little lock ring is damaged, it's been bent, any of these, you know, the lip here has been shredded, it's damaging your piston on the inside, you just don't like the look of it, it gave you an eye while you were at lunch. Get rid of it, buy another one. Alright, what we are going to talk about first is make sure that your piston, this is from an E20, we're doing an E30, the piston is not shredded, okay? By that I mean, you know, ISO didn't harden up inside your packing, and every time it was going up and down and up and down, it was eating away the side of your piston, all the chrome and everything like that. You can buy another one from Graco, you know, through us, or you can get it re-chromed at a piston shop in your area, use a micrometer, check the sizing, send it off, get it back. Sometimes, you know, if you don't have time for the downtime, you might have to use this one, order in a new one, you know, change it out on the weekend, or, you know, if you have time to wait for a new one, or, you know, get it re-chromed, like I said. Sometimes it's a cheaper option. So, first thing we're going to do is work on the piston. I'll just pause this here. Alright guys, so we're going to grab our piston here, make sure it's all clean. If you pulled apart both your A and your B, make sure you're putting your A back in your A and your B in your B. Make sure you're not dinging this up on anything and it's staying nice and shiny. Alright, a little bit of grease is fine. This is like jewelry, okay? It's foam world, this is your jewelry. Alright, so we're going to grease this guy up a little bit. Right there. And you want to take your little packing U-cup, make sure the ribbing is facing up so that it can pull. Alright, that just pops in there. Slide that guy all the way down. And now you take this retainer, we're just going to switch over to the vise here. Alright, so there's this recess here on the E31 that goes facing up so that this guy can sit in there. On the EXP2 and the A25 pumps, they're the same, those ones. They actually have the two-part system, okay? So there's this guy here has this piece that's up a bit is actually a whole separate ring. So if you look on your manual that we do have, and hopefully you have out, you take my advice, you can see what parts there are. Down here it does say 971 and 648 are both for the EXP2 and the A25. That's the system used there. These ones that are listed here for the piston, packing, and retainer, that's all for the E20 and E30, okay? Make sure you're going by the right ones, otherwise you'll be searching for a part that's not even in, you know, your kit, right? If you are having troubles reading any of these manuals, up here, it does list E20, EXP2, A25, E30, and it says right next to it the part number of that pump. So then when you are looking, you know, in your little parts here, for, you know, part number 1 is your piston, it will say 3 different pistons, that's because it's referring to which style of pump, right? You can't go putting, you know, an E20 piston instead of an E30 piston. They're a lot different size, right? Make sure you're ordering the right stuff. If you call in, it's a lot, you know, saves you time, saves us time. If you have the part number, know what you want, okay? Carrying on with this guy, throw that guy on like we were talking about. It's a little Loctite 263, all right? Just put a little dot right there. All right, and there's that carbide seat for the ball. Make sure that is nice and clean. Everything, it's not dinged. If it is, get a new one, okay? Go to throw this on, but wait, don't forget your balls, okay? If you go to pick up the piston afterwards, it's not your little maraca rattling around. You forgot your balls. And the E30 should be a 1 1/4 inch wrench. Alright. So, like every other packing on pistons, you want to give it a twist side to side, give it on up and down, okay? Make sure it's not shifting around. If it is, it's going to do it inside your pump. Your pump's a lot stronger than we are. So, you know, if you can do it, it can do it. This guy's done. We got our balls. All right. So that can just go off there. Throw it on some paper towel so it's not rolling around getting all scratched up. All right. So I like to start with this guy. It's your main pump part. This is where your packing for your piston ends up sliding up and down in. Okay. If you look either side of this, there's a little ring here. That is to stick a screwdriver in and be able to pull this sleeve out when you're disassembling your pump. If, you know, that's just a good way to remember that's up, right? Like that's the part that's going to be sticking up. So we just get your O-ring. It's the bigger O-ring. In your kit, there will be 3 Teflon O-rings that come in. Okay, 2 are the same size. They are the ones for this guy. There's a top and a bottom. And there is a smaller O-ring that comes that is Teflon, and it is for inside your little cone thing, nose cone. And just like always, what's our friend? Mr. Grease. Not just any grease, moisture-free lithium. If you need a little bit extra lubrication, you can throw some diactyl phthalate, because here in Canada we're allowed to use it. It's a nice lubricant. If you're watching down in the States, you can use some TSL, do something moisture free. You don't want to be throwing something with water in the grease and then you go, you know, cycle ISO through it and the whole thing seizes up and back to square one. Might as well hit that previous button and just rewatch the video at that point. Okay, I like to give this guy a tap, just make sure it's in. Sometimes that bottom O-ring does like to pop off, cause some space. Okay, so now flip this guy right over. Okay, so now we're looking at this end. So grease, 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 outside, inside. So when the piston goes in, you have grease on there. Okay, I like to drop this guy in the center. Okay, so it's sitting there nice and in the middle. Before I build my wet cup, or if you're doing the B-side pump, you know, it's got that little felt retainer. You just screw this guy in, okay? And that gives you your constant, evenly spaced pressure, right? And seats down that packing perfectly. You don't have to worry about breaking your packing. These things are like $50, something like that, each. And that guy is now perfectly sat. All right, we're good to go. See, tips of the trade. We're gonna grease this guy up, inside and out. Okay, so it slides down nicer. That sits on top of there. And now the wet cup goes on. I'm not going to put this wet cup on just yet. I like to do that last, okay? before the piston goes in. I like to get this guy ready first. That's what I call my nose cone. Technical term is intake valve sleeve. I like nose cone better. That's all right. So that smaller O-ring, right, we were talking about, that guy goes in here. We're going to be talking about our little carbide seat here in a second. All right, just use this pick, give it a little push down. This one has a nice little 45 on it, get an edge. Now our ball seat, okay. There's a micro bevel along here if you watched our hydraulic video trying to figure out what's going on with your machine previously, but there is this micro bevel on the edge. You might need a magnifying glass or a light just to be able to check it out, depending on your vision and how well lit your rig is. If there's any dings or nicks out of this thing, you know, you can flip it over, use the other side, interchangeable. If there are dings on both sides, chuck it out. When your piston comes up, you're drawing and your lower ball is up, and when your piston comes back down, that lower ball has to seat in here and create the seal. If it doesn't have that seal, it's losing pressure by pushing all that fluid back to your transfer pumps, okay? You're pressurizing your transfer hose, not your spray hose, okay? That you're gonna have huge issues, okay? Just trust me, if it's dinged, replace it. GRE, ASE, lithium grease. Alright, so now we just need our balls. Make sure you inspect that guy. If there's any ISO, you know, that still crystallize on it, you can take it to a wire wheel as long as it's a brass wire wheel. It won't damage the steel. Don't use steel wire wheels. If you don't know which one it is, go spend the 20 bucks and buy a different wheel. Okay, don't chance ruining your $200 part because of $20 wheel, right? Cost efficiency. Next is our ball housing cage. I like to call it the cage. It sounds meaner. So this guy sits in there. Okay, now because this is an E30, it takes this little fun spring. Okay, this just sits in here. If your pump's been ran for a while and you're taking it apart, you're gonna have to use a Phillips screwdriver to undo this. But that does just sit in there. And on the E20, the EXP2, that is not in there. We're gonna set that guy to the side now, okay? So, building your wet cup, all right? This one is a brand new one, so I took it apart. I'm not gonna muck around with the O-rings. We're just gonna re-grease everything, stick it back together. I'm gonna show you the trick that I have for putting them back together and dealing with the ring. Makes your life a bit easier. There is an O-ring right here on the inside. That's the smaller, fatter O-ring of the, rubber O-ring of the kit. There's kind of a mid-size one here. There's usually a brown one. It's about, you know, yay big. That one goes at the bottom of this wet cup. You can stick it on now, but it'd probably just fall off in this, okay? First, we need our spring, then our wet cup. Make sure all this is clean. This is the thing that actually actuates your TSL to lubricate your piston on the up and down. It ends up creating suction through up and down motion. Bolt, washer, bigger washer, and a nut. Okay, just make sure they all kind of work with each other. And we can make all of this a lot easier because holding this spring in while you're putting in this thing is not the easiest task. If you don't believe me, go try it. Okay, so, and if you can do it, give me a call, let me know how, all right? Okay, so I have a 3/4 inch bolt, I have a 3/4 inch nut, I have a 3/4 inch ratchet and wrench. Okay, we push this guy down, Not too much, because we don't want to damage that spring. Spring's our friend. He pushes the wet cup back out when you just leave all this attached, okay? This is the fun part. I'm just gonna grab a screwdriver, guys. I open this up, okay? It's kind of like a key ring, sticking on a key. You open this up, you stick this in this little slot here. Okay, and now with your one screwdriver, you just stick it on the lower piece that you just stuck in. And work it around. Sometimes you have to pull on the upper part here. I'm standing here. I'm trying to get it in at the 12 o'clock position. I might need to pull the top spring to the 6 o'clock position just so that I can, you know, bring out all the stress of the lock ring. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, comment down below. So now that ring is in, we can back off this bolt and nut. And ta-da! We have a belt wet cup. All right, so now this can get screwed into here, but not before we, come on kids, G-R-E-A-S-E, give me some grease, right? And we need this O-ring. What do we need on the O-ring? Some grease, right? And this guy screws in here. Why do we need the grease on the A side? What do you think, huh? So if there is an ISO leak, and if your ISO is going to leak anywhere on this machine, it's probably going to be by this wet cup. There's a lot of moving parts in this pump. Okay, everything's going through here. If it does start trickling out a little bit, you know, up here runs in, you want to be able to take that apart. Okay, as somebody that takes apart pumps, put together pumps all day, every day, if you don't do that, it's not fun. Break out the torch, be prepared to start screaming at it and just wrenching. Okay, so next we need to get our piston in here. Super lube time, okay? This is diactyl phthalate. We soak our felts in it. All right, so I lube this guy up, okay? A little bit of grease. Lube up the piston, a little bit of grease. I lubed up this, I lubed up the bottom before, right? Grease, 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 and we grease some out. All right, now I take some diactyl phthalate. It's a lubricant, okay? I rub it in there, I rub it here. It gets to be my super grease. It's a little greasy, but it works. Constant pressure on here if you're wearing gloves. Flat pump, so you don't have your glove end up getting stuck in underneath the packings, okay? So now we need something wood, okay, or metal. This piece here, the hole, the intake hole that you're gonna notice looking down at this, you don't want something that's gonna go inside of there and damage that ball or the carbide seat, okay? Make sure it is big enough that it's gonna sit, you know, over the circumference of that hole. And then just give it a tap. If you notice that, you know, that piece as it's going down starts to grind that bore where your packing is going to ride, stop. Something's wrong, okay? We don't want to be shredding metal, okay? This isn't a Kiss concert or anything like that, right? You know, just gonna grab this guy right here, right? It's nice, large, thick O-ring. This one's gonna go at the bottom here. Okay, so once you get it on, trick is kind of just Go around the threads and it will walk its way down. Walk this way. Alright. So now, a little nose cone here. Screws on the top part of the pump. And you can stick, so there's these two flat spots. These can go into the vise. The other option is just stick the top of the pump in the vise. Just give me a second. Nice big wrench. And we're just going to do this guy up tight. So now we can throw it on this guy. We don't want to tighten this wet cup up until after the piston's in and everything's done, okay? What happens is when the wet cup goes down, your packings get smushed and it flares out the sides and it puts pressure on this piston. You'll have a harder time moving it up and down. The machine probably won't. Don't go super tight. You'll strip the threads. You can also stop the piston completely. But now we want to go and do this. Okay, that's tight. That guy can go. I know we have this. There's two sides to it, okay? This one has a nice flat spot that's going to contact the bottom of the pump housing, and the spot doesn't, okay? Flat spot up. Where it stops. I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to grab the top housing piece. I'm going to talk about that for a second. I'm not going to install it fully. I went, I grabbed, I came right back, okay? So the top piece, this attaches to your motor, all right? Before I stick any of these guys on, I like to use this grease right here. This is LMX red grease, good lubrication. You know, you don't need your lithium moisture free because this shouldn't be in contact with ISO. I'm just gonna lube up the inside. Okay, lube up this guy. I also take all this old crap out. Look at the date of your machine. Have you ever done this? If your grease hasn't been changed, it's the same as your car, right? Or gearbox on that. You know, you want to upkeep stuff. You want to grease it up. Taking this apart and just lubing it up is a good idea too. This guy here, it's got this hole. You probably noticed it taking it off. There's a little pin. We'll go this way with a ring. Okay, this ring moves up and down. This little pin, you gotta use a punch or hammer or something like that. Punch it out. If there was ISO everywhere, you might have had to torch it. You might have had to back this guy off. You probably had to back this guy off first. Sometimes there's a finger guard sitting on top of this. Okay, the finger guard is actually good. It gives you the proper spacing of your wet cup from this. If you don't have that spacing and your pump goes in too high up, your wet cup's too high up, right? This can't come down all the way to finish the cycle. Your motor will jam and this whole thing will bust in half. Same with your gear housing, okay? All right, guys, so, you just line up this top piston driver thing, okay? Make sure that ring is up. Take your little pin, stick that pin through to the piston, and I know what you're thinking. Yes, it's easier to put it in than it was to take it out. Okay, so now we can drop this guy down, right? This is just gonna sit up here. And we're gonna screw this one down, okay? Before you start just going all the way down, okay? Hopefully you have that finger guard we talked about, because when it stops, you stop, just like a manual valve, okay? If you don't have one of those, what you wanna look for is top of this housing. So where the wet cup ends and this housing starts, that's where you want to make sure that this plane right here is in line with, okay? If you're on the A side of the machine, there's this little you know, there's this hole here where the fitting's gonna go for your interconnects. If you're on the left side of your machine, right, your interconnect runs that way to your block heater. So you want to make sure that hole is kind of this way. So you want to try and have it over here, right? If you're on the B side, it's going that way to your heater. So you want to make sure it is this way to your heater, okay? And then just don't snug this guy up until you actually have it on the machine mounted and everything, because then that gives you time to, you know, room to wiggle this around. You still have to put in your plugs and your, you know, your TSL or lubrication system for your piston and everything like that. We do that on the machine once everything's done, and that's another reason why you don't want to tighten it, so you can still spin it and put your plugs in and then all your fittings in. We'll call it a day. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it's informative. If you have questions or anything like that, don't, you know, hesitate to give us a shout. I don't know if we can put, you know, we'll put the number in the description, maybe right around here somewhere. That'll be our phone number. Website's polysource.ca. Once again, this is Nate, Polysource. Thanks for watching.
Polysource Industries, your one-stop shop for all things foam and protective coatings.